Hi there, my name is Hannah Walker and I'm a Salesforce Business Analyst for EPAM PolSource. Today I'm going to walk through with you the Migrate to Flow tool, which is part of the Spring 2022 Salesforce release. This tool is going to aid us in transitioning our existing workflow rules over to flows. At the end of 2022, Salesforce will be retiring workflow rules. Any existing ones will still run, but you won't be able to create new ones. Instead, Salesforce have put time into optimizing the flow builder and flows, and have launched the new Migrate to Flow tool, which is going to assist us with the transition. I've got the release notes open here, so we can see our convert workflow rules to flows with the Migrate to Flow tool. We can also see it's currently a beta version, so we can expect some updates made to this in the future. If we scroll on down a bit, we can see the why section, which is going to explain to us which workflow rules we can currently migrate. So any that are field-based criteria, field updates, email updates, outbound messages, time-dependent workflow actions, and any with rule criteria formula that's set to true. We will also start seeing these gentle reminders when entering the workflow rules section of Salesforce, suggesting that we build them in Flow Builder instead. So if I now go over into my Salesforce org, you can see here I'm in the workflow rules section, and we can also see this little prompt here telling us to use Flow Builder. I've got a couple of different flows I'd like to try today. I've got these 4 different workflow rules that use a whole bunch of different criteria and actions. So if we start with our web account workflow rule, we can see that this is an active workflow rule on the account object. The evaluation criteria is set to evaluate the rule when a record is created. And our rule criteria is very basic, just that account source equals web. So whenever the account source is web, that's when this workflow rule is going to trigger. And our immediate workflow action is a field update. So we are updating the rating field on the account. So if I now go over to the Migrate to Flow tool, which I've searched for here in the search bar, again, we now see our existing workflow rules. So if I now click on the web account workflow rule, I then try the Migrate to Flow button, and we can see that it's been successfully created. We can see here my new flow that's been launched, and we've got a button here to go into the flow builder. And then we've got our step 2 section here, which is to activate the flow. So if I press switch activations, it's going to deactivate my workflow rule and the flow will become active instead. If I go into our flow builder, we can see here that my really basic workflow rule has now become an equally basic flow. Probably easier than some of the workflow rules that you'll have in your org. But we can see here object account, we can see the trigger, a record is created, and if we go into the details there, we can see that the conditions are account source equals web. So it's gone over exactly as it was in my workflow rule. So if I go back to the org, and if I switch activations, we can now see that my workflow rule was deactivated and my flow was activated. So I'll close that. I will go back to my other workflow rules. And we can now see the web account is deactivated. If I now go to my closed lost workflow rule, this one's a bit different. So this one is evaluate the rule when a record is created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. So we've got a different evaluation criteria for this one. And for the rule criteria, we've got opportunity stage equals close lost. And our immediate workflow action is to clear the description field. So it's another field update. So if I go back to our Migrate to Flow tool, I click close lost, migrate flow. And again, we can see that this one was successfully created. So even though I've done a different type of criteria, using the every time it's created or edited to subsequently meet criteria, it's still been able to convert it. So if I wanted to, I could do the same actions to switch the activations right now. I'm going to show you some other workflow rules beforehand. So as we could see in the release notes, not all kinds of workflow rules are going to be able to migrate straight away. There are some limitations. So I'm now going to show you some of the limitations that exist currently. So if I go into case escalation, this is a case-based workflow rule. And again, it's to evaluate the rule when a record is created and any time it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. And our rule criteria for this one is case escalated equals true and case status equals escalated. Then we've got a mixture of different actions here. So my immediate actions are to create a task and a field update. And then I've also set here a time-dependent workflow action. So 30 days after the rule trigger date, we've also got a task that's going to be created. And if I go back over to the Migrate to Flow tool, this workflow rule is a little bit trickier with the inclusion of tasks and time-based workflow rules. So let's see if it's going to work. There we go. We can't migrate this workflow rule to a flow. We can't migrate this workflow rule because it contains task workflow actions. Migrate to Flow doesn't support this configuration. So hopefully this is something that Salesforce will be able to support in the future, but it's just something to bear in mind currently if you're trying to migrate workflow rules over. It might be worth recreating these as Flow right from scratch. Or you could remove the task components from your existing workflow rules, migrate them over, and then update your flows from there. My final workflow rule that I'd like to show you today is my status update. So this is an opportunity-based workflow rule. And again, we've got evaluate the rule when a record is created and anytime it's edited to subsequently meet criteria. And our rule criteria is opportunity stage equals close one and opportunity close date equals today. And then in our workflow actions, we've got a new task and a field update. So we've seen already that tasks are unable to be migrated. If I go back to our Migrate to Flow tool, status updates, migrate to Flow, and now it's also showing us that it can't migrate this flow because it uses the today function. So again, this is another limitation to bear in mind if you're trying to migrate any existing workflow rules over to flows. So whilst there's definitely still some work to be done on this tool, it's absolutely a great start in helping you to transition your existing workflow rules over to flows. And it's also a good prompt for us to start using flows for any of our future automation. For more information on this tool, please see the Spring 2022 release notes. And thank you for watching.